learners and listeners, welcome to this session. The title of today's session is Human Security. I have already recorded earlier one session on human security. In the previous lecture, I have discussed about the definition and the perspectives about human security. This topic is part of the course BGP 003 Conflict and Peace Management. Myself, Dr. G. Uma, working as a faculty in the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Welcome to this session. Let us continue learn about definitions of human security. If human security first saw light within international organizations and then states, it has increasingly become a subject of interest in the academic world, where it does not suffer from a deficient of definitions. Defining it has been an art reminiscent of the blind man who each tried to describe an elephant according to the part they were able to feel. I hope all the learners know about the story of the blind man. They try to touch the elephant and they try to describe the elephant based on the part which they have touched and understood, and they were not able to describe the entire elephant. Like that, if human security first saw light within international organizations and then states, it has increasingly become a subject of interest in the academic world, where it does not suffer from a deficit of definitions. Defining it has an art reminiscent of a blind man who each tried to describe an elephant according to the part they were able to feel. Elephant was described as a long, narrow, soft column by the one who had touched the trunk, a massive circular bulk by he who had felt its body, and a hard pointed objected by blind man who had felt the ivory. The myriad of academic definitions on human security and the fact that one definition has not been coined so far similarly reinforces the view that the quote, truth unquote, about the definition is in the eyes of the beholder. The simplest definition of security is absence of insecurity and threats, that is freedom from both fear, that is fear of physical, sexual, psychological abuse, violence, prosecution and death, and want, that is of gainful employment, food, health. So human security therefore deals with the capacity to identify threats, to avoid them when possible, and to mitigate their effects when they do not occur. That is the basic thing. That is the human security therefore deals with the capacity to identify threats, to avoid them when possible, and to mitigate their effects when they do not occur. According to United Nations, there are various definitions given by the institutions, individuals and academicians. Various officers of the United Nations have defined human security. According to the former Secretary General Dr. Kofi Annan, quote, human security in its broadest sense embraces far more than the absence of violent conflict. It encompasses human rights, good governance, access to education and healthcare, and ensuring that each individual has opportunities and choices to fulfill his or her potential. Every step in this direction is also a step towards reducing poverty, achieving economic growth, and preventing conflict. Freedom from want, freedom from fear, freedom of future generations to inherit a healthy natural environment, these are the interrelated building blocks of human and therefore national security, unquote. According to United Nations definitions, they try to provide the comprehensive definition on human security by considering the present generation as well as the future generation. Sadako Okato, former United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, suggested that several key elements make up human security. A first essential element is the possibility for all citizens to live in peace and security within their own borders. This implies the capacity of the states and citizens to prevent and resolve conflicts through peaceful and non-violent means, and after the conflict is over, the ability to effectively carry out reconciliation efforts. The second element is that people should enjoy without discrimination all rights and obligations that includes human, political, social, economic and cultural rights that belonging to a state implies. A third element is social inclusion or having equal access to the political, social and economic policy making process as well as to draw equal benefits from them. A fourth element is that of the establishment of rule of law and independence of the justice system. Each individual in the society should have the same rights and obligations and be subject to the same set of rules. These basic elements, which are predicted on the equality of all before the law, effectively remove any risk of arbitrariness, which so often manifests itself in discrimination, abuse, or oppression. Ohata further points out that, quote, threats to human security are varied, political and military, but also social, economic and environmental. A wide array of factors contribute to making people feel insecure, from the laying of landmines and the proliferation of small arms to transnational threats such as drugs trafficking, of HIV, refugees fleeing conflicts. One of the main factors of human security is precisely the lack of effective political and security mechanism to address conflicts, unquote. United Nations Development Programme provides the following definitions, quote, human security can be said to have two main aspects. It means, first, safety from such chronic threats such as hunger, disease and repression, and second, it means protection from sudden and hurtful disruptions in the patterns of daily life, whether in homes, in jobs or in communities. Such threats can exist at all levels of national income and development, unquote. According to UNDP, the list of threats to human security is long, but most can be considered under several main categories. These categories include economic security, food security, health security, environmental security, personal security, community security and political security. So, if you talk about the securities, there are various securities we can talk about. These securities can be put in these categories, that is economic, food, health, environmental, personal, community and political security. United Nations Deputy Secretary General Louis Frechette says, quote, what so we mean by human security? We mean, in its most simple expression, all those things that men and women anywhere in the world cherish the most: enough food for the family, adequate shelter, good health, schooling for the children, protection from violence whether inflicted by men or by nature, and the state which does not oppress its citizens but rules with their consent, unquote. Definitions by other experts, quote, human security refers to the quality of life of the people of the society or polity. Anything which degrades their quality of life, whether it's a demographic pressure, diminished access to or stock or resources and so on, is the security threat. Conversely, anything which can upgrade their quality of life, economic growth, improved access to resources, social and political empowerment, and so on, is an enhancement of human security. Hans von Ginkel, he is the rector, United Nations University, and Edward Newman define human security as, quote, in policy terms, human security is an integrated, sustainable, comprehensive security from fear, conflict, ignorance, poverty, social and cultural deprivation and hunger, resting upon positive and negative freedoms, unquote. Human Security Network and looks human security as, quote, a humane world where people can live in security and dignity, free from poverty and despair, is still a dream for many and should be enjoyed by all. In such a world, every individual would be guaranteed freedom from fear and freedom from want, with an equal opportunity to fully develop their human potential. Building human security is essential to achieving this goal. In essence, human security means freedom from pervasive threats to people's rights, their safety, and or even their lives, unquote. According to Kanti Bajpai, quote, human security relates to the protection of the individual's personal safety and freedom from direct and indirect threats of violence, the promotion of human development and good governance, and, when necessary, the collective use of sanctions and force are central to managing human security. States, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other groups in civil society in combination are vital to prospects of human security, unquote. Lingen Chen suggests that, quote, the term human security focuses the concept of security of human survival, well-being, and freedom, unquote. He conceptualized human security as the objective and ultimate ends of all security concern. In this schema, the other forms of security are simply means for achieving the ultimate objects of human security, unquote. David T. Graham and Nana K. Poku suggest that, quote, rather than viewing security as being concerned with individuals as citizens, that is toward their states, or our approach views security as being concerned with individuals as a persons, unquote. As an approach that focuses upon the importance of insecurities facing people rather than dominant pragmatic paradigmatic orthodoxy that views critical concerns of migration, recognizes the citizenship basic needs, that is sustenance, protection, refugee status, or human rights, legal standing, as problems of interstate politics and consequently beyond the realm of ethical and moral. Arnie Hammerstedt is of the view that, quote, according to both critical and human security approaches, security is about the social, political, environmental, and economic conditions conducive to a life in freedom and dignity for the individual, unquote. So far, we have seen the different people's definition on human security. Now let us see human security principles and approaches. From an operational perspective, human security aims to address complex situations of insecurity through collaborative, responsive, and sustainable measures that are people-centered, multi-sectoral, comprehensive, context-specific, and prevention-oriented. In addition, human security employs the hybrid approach that brings together these elements through a protection and empowerment framework. Subsequently, each human security principle informs the human security approach and must be integrated into design of human security program. These measures seek to reduce the livelihood of conflicts and help overcome the obstacles to development and promote human rights for all. Human security principles along with their approach have been discussed in details as under people-centered principle has the following approach. that is inclusive and participatory, considers individuals and communities in defining their needs, vulnerabilities, and in acting as active agents of change, collectively determines which securities to address and identifies the available resources, including local assets and indigenous coping mechanism. With regard to multi-sectoral principle has the following approach: addressing multi-sectorality by promoting dialogue among key sectors from different sectors or fields helps to ensure coherence and coordination across traditionally separate sectors or fields, assesses positive and negative externalities of each response on overall human security situation of affected community or communities. Next one is the comprehensive principle has the following approach, that is the holistic analysis. The 7 security components of human security. It addresses the wide spectrum of threats, vulnerabilities and capacities, analysis of actors and sectors not previously considered relevant to the success of the policy programs or project, develop multi-sectoral, multi-actor responses. Next is the context-specific principle has the following approach. Requires in-depth analysis of targeted situation, focuses on the core set of freedoms and rights under threat in a given situation, identifies the concrete needs of the affected communities and enables the development of more appropriate solutions that are embedded in local realities, capacities and coping mechanisms. Takes into account local, national, regional and global dimensions and their impact on the targeted situation. Prevention-oriented principle has the following approach. Identifies the risk, threats and hazards and addresses their root causes. Focuses on preventive responses through a protection and empowerment framework. The human security approach in conflict prevention and peace building. The human security approach has focused on strengthening citizen security, improving the delivery of and access to basic social services, restoring livelihoods, promoting community reconciliation and enhancing conflict prevention activities by focusing on bringing the rewards of peace to people and communities, and by emphasizing that a lasting peace hinges on the life free from fear, want and exclusion. The human security approach can help to recast efforts towards concrete interventions that address people's needs. Multi-sectoral strategies that engage a broad range of UN local stakeholders have been pivotal in producing peace divided needed to bolster confidence in consolidating peace and transitioning to recovery. The human security based needs, vulnerabilities and capacity analysis supports more targeted, efficient and sustainable priority setting. The analysis provides the foundation for capacity building, empowerment strategies that nurture local ownership and promote greater sustainability. In an interconnected world, security must be seen as a global public good. The state-centric notion of security, which lays emphasis on the territorial integrity of the state and the role of military force, falls short in addressing the different dimensions of security in the life of individual human beings. State-centric security policies tend to take the top-down approach that falls to address issues that ultimately affect civilians' perceived sense of safety, peace and justice in the long term. There is a growing consensus about the more holistic approach based on better understanding of what individuals and communities need in order to feel safe and secure. By recognizing the structural causes of conflicts in terms of social, economic, political exclusion, grievances and inequalities, the human security approach requires analyzing root causes, mapping existing local capacities for peace, and designing coordinated strategies for civil society and governmental preventive action as a part of long-term commitment to peace. Let us see the people-centered bottom-up approach. Human security refers to the security of the individual as opposed to the security of the states. When individuals and communities are put at the center of analysis, there are implications for the assessment, planning, implementation, and evaluation of security and peace building initiatives. All these require in-depth knowledge of the situation and context-specific solutions. The human security approach is not only centered on people as an objects of intervention but also the providers of security in their own right. This takes into consideration the needs of the population, their capacities, and fundamentally their judgments. Sustainable human security is therefore not only the responsibility of the states but also of citizens and local communities. Consequently, international efforts should support local capacities and leadership to enable local response strategies to conflict as much as possible. Ultimately, the legitimacy of both state institutions and security strategies relates to the extent to which populations perceive access to justice, basic human needs, and space for participation. The security policy making process requires participatory mechanism to determine what individuals and communities perceive as security threats as well as what is needed in order to feel secure. The human security approach recognizes that civil society is not an homogeneous group. Consequently, perspectives and needs of different segments of population including men, women, boys, girls, refugees, minorities needs to be considered. A gender inclusive approach further recognizes and addresses the different vulnerabilities of women, men to these threats and their respective strength and skills to build more secure society. Accountability towards local populations requires long-term relationships building and collaboration with a broad range of local actors including diverse civil society and interest groups. Peace and security challenges, we have to see this growing complexity of threats to peaceful coexistence and social justice. Human security requires multiple and diverse actors to develop solutions to interdependent threats. The interconnectedness of threats means they may spill over from the borders of one country to region to other, one country or region to other, eventually affecting people across wider region and even globally. So human security also recognizes the interlinkages between peace, development, human rights and other fields which are all relevant to address the cross-cutting challenges in conflict-affected contexts. Human security calls for complementary strategies ranging from the local to the regional and global levels as well as intersectoral collaboration. Violence as an unintended outcome of bad practice and lack of conflict sensitivity. The implementation of certain security sector reform and demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration of program can generate more harm than good when carried out with minimum consultation or involvement of diverse local stakeholders or appropriate contextualization. From well-intended intervention can undermine existing peace-building efforts or contribute to new outbreaks of violence if not properly turned in with the context. Comprehensive approach, that is human security centered. This is the growing push for the comprehensive approach at the United Nations, requires not only multidisciplinary approach by the states but also regional intergovernmental bodies and civil society organizations from the field to work together. Especially when it comes to foreign intervention, this has consequences for how actions in one sector affect those in another, requiring good communication and coordination mechanisms. Before any action can take place, there must be a common understanding of conflict and goals needs to be aligned. These are some of the readings I have taken. This lecture is prepared based on these readings. If anyone is interested to learn more about the human security, you can read these readings. Hope you could able to understand human security and various dimensions with related to human security, how these concepts have evolved over a period of time. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. Again we will meet in some other lecture. Thank you.